All right, so I used to think that mixing friends and business was a great idea. I mean, why not make some of the best people in your life a part of the things that you want to try and do, whether that's in work or in business, and basically anything where results really, really matter. And so in this video, I want to talk about why this is actually a bad idea, why it's super detrimental, and some of the stories I've kind of experienced where this has impacted me both financially and relationship wise, and an example of where we can kind of learn from this and think more about it from like a business perspective. So I was reading The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. If you want to see my reading list, go ahead and check out the description where I've got my reading list of all the books that I'm reading. And on law number 2, the book talks about why it's more powerful to basically use enemies to get what you want as opposed to friends in the game of power. And so while I was reading this chapter, it was talking about how powerful rulers in the past have relied on friends for things and they've ended up getting killed because of it. Whereas, if you take people that you trust and, have relationships with, you might overlook some of the negative qualities of those people. And as they're on their own journey to power, they will inevitably take over what you're trying to accomplish. And so, of course, that's like a huge overly dramatic for what we're trying to talk about in this video. But reading this chapter made me reflect on some of the instances in my life where I've relied on friends for things and it has not worked out. And it's actually a pretty good example of how people say don't mix family and friends in business because it will hurt you, and I've experienced that in my life. And so I wanted to make a video and talk about it and tell the story so you can make your own judgments as to whether or not you want to do it or some things to watch out for. So in my first example, I'm going to talk about a story with a friend of mine who I'll call Joey. Joey will be my male figure example for future videos, and similarly for female, it will be Charlotte. And so Joey was a friend of mine from the Pokemon trading card game. I had started a e-commerce business selling Pokemon cards online, and I had this great idea that I wanted to basically procure inventory from around the United States and then send it to my friend Joey so that he could package it up and then ship it to Amazon FBA, and that we could basically have like a little logistics network of buying cards all over the country, sending it to Joey. He would do kind of the manual labor of packaging up the cards and getting them ready for sale. We would send them to Amazon, and then Amazon would basically distribute the cards all over the US at really high prices compared to what we were capable of doing in other marketplaces. And so that was basically the idea. I was the one that was doing all of the packaging and the manual work at the time, and I wanted my time spent on other stuff. Procuring inventory was going to be the best use of my time, and Joey, who was looking to make some money, was super excited about kind of the opportunity to get in on something where I was basically going to cut him in on 50% of the revenue that we would be making, and he would have to put no money in. All I needed from him was his time and effort, and that was going to be how it went. So great idea. We've put together some agreements. We've made some clauses about, hey, this is a business transaction. Like, I really need this to work out, all that stuff. And so sure enough, I procured about $1,000 in Pokemon cards from around the country and sent them to Joey. And when I checked in on Joey to kind of see how things were going at like the 1 month mark, we're talking about thousands and thousands of cards that he would be taking and kind of putting into little packages and then sending off to Amazon. I basically wanted to make sure all of the stuff was done prior to us doing that. And so I reached out to him and I was like, hey, how's it going? What's the progress? Do you think we're going to have everything out the door by the end of the month? And all I got were kind of like wishy-washy. Oh no, this came up in my personal life. I'm busy with this. I haven't had time to do it, but next month I'll get it to you. I'll get it done. And I was like, okay, sure, no problem. Obviously I would have liked it done on the original time schedule, but this is a friend of mine, so I'm going to overlook it, and the value of the partnership is more valuable than, kind of a one mistake hiccup. And so I said, okay, no problem, no worries, I'll give you another month. Another month goes by, and I reach out and I said, hey, month 2 is over. How are we looking? Is everything kind of ready to go? I really want to send this off to Amazon. How's the work coming? And same kind of story, same like, oh, this came up, I'm like 50% done, I'm not fully done, just need a little bit more time to kind of get the rest going. I was like, great, at least there's been some progress, we'll try again next month. Next month comes by and the story continues until eventually we got to a point where he was saying, everything's ready to ship, it's good to go. I send him a shipping label to kind of make it happen. And to this day, multiple years in the future, that inventory was never actually sent to Amazon. And so, what's really interesting about this is the opportunity that I had identified at the time faded because as the market changed in what we were doing, that specific thing I was trying to accomplish ended up no longer working out about 6 months later. And so as this delay in trying to get this inventory out the door ended up going on longer and longer, we no longer had the opportunity to do it. And so it basically became, there's thousands of cards at my friend Joey's house that it's not even worth sending anymore to Amazon, and they've just been stuck there the whole time. And so because Joey's my friend and I wanted to uphold this relationship, I allowed performance to basically slip over time, and which this ended up impacting my business negatively because I lost $1,000 in inventory, and it added a little bit of tension to the relationship I had with this person, as I largely felt like, hey, my friend dropped the bag here. So that sucks, not fun. The second story that I have is actually from my time at McDonald's. And so at 18, I became a shift manager, which was very young to be a shift manager at the time. And so what was really interesting about this is I got promoted to a shift manager while I was in high school with all of my coworkers. And so I quickly went from everyone's friend to everyone's boss. And so I was still friends with them. And, in a way I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. Like I can choose who I want on my shifts and kind of, create schedules. I can help people out with what they're doing at work. And hopefully if I bring my friends onto my shift, then we'll all have a great time. And so there was a specific friend that I did this for. Her name was Charlotte. And so Charlotte wanted to work on the shift that I was going to work on. We had been friends for a long time throughout high school. And so I thought it'd be a great idea to not only have some fun, personally, as in I enjoy talking to this person and we get along well, but also, they would be a good worker and I would, as a manager, be able to kind of run the ship in the way that was expected of me. Well, boy, was I wrong. And so by bringing on Charlotte to my shift, we did have a good time. We had some fun. But over time, as things became more serious in the fact that I'm a shift manager at this McDonald's and I need results to kind of be held because that's my job, things with Charlotte started to kind of become a little strained. For example, Charlotte would continuously show up late to every single shift. And I'm not talking about 2 minutes or 5 minutes. I'm talking 15, 30. And then, I, as her friend, would kind of ignore it. Hey, not a problem. She's not getting paid for those hours, and it's not super impacting me. No worries. Maybe a few times it caused some hiccups, but not a huge deal. Then, if I would ask her to do some stuff or like, hey, we need this thing cleaned, very regular stuff that like a shift manager would be telling regular coworkers and employees to do on a shift, I would get some pushback, like, oh, why are you choosing me over this person? Like, what's the deal with that? I thought we were friends. And it's like, okay, so now we're being guilt tripped a little bit. And then in some more extreme examples, there were instances where this person was doing drugs on the shift. And so as a shift manager, I had kind of this debate of myself of like, well, this is my friend. I don't want to get them fired. But as a manager, like this is a part of my role is to like, make sure that the store is performing well and that things like this are not happening. And so, what ended up kind of happening is I kind of confronted Charlotte and I was like, hey, like, look, you're my friend and we have a good time and this is great, but like, you're actually starting to hurt the performance of like what's going on here because you're on the shift, you're not doing any work, other people are contributing in a way that's helpful and you're doing things that could get us all in trouble, like what gives kind of thing. And her response to that was, oh, well, we're friends, like, this shouldn't matter, I don't understand why you're pressing me about this, blah, 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 blah. And the result of this is not only did I lose a friend because now all I could think about when I thought about this person was, like, the amount of headache that this person is causing me as a shift manager, but at the same time, my own performance as an employee of someone else was starting to suffer because we didn't have a fully functioning staff in the way that I could have had if I had someone else. And the argument of, well, if this person was equally as bad but was not my friend, in that instance, I would have had no emotion in terms of taking disciplinary action to try and fix that issue, which I know is not a friendly subject or anything to talk about, but that is reality. If it's my job to deliver results and do a good job, and actively there is something that is kind of preventing that from happening, if we go through the steps of trying to make it happen, eventually the problem has to be addressed. And so I allowed my personal emotions to get in the way because I have this built up loyalty and trust with these friends. And so those are two examples where friendship kind of tugs at you emotionally and makes it really hard to kind of differentiate between achieving business results, whereas you're trying to maintain appearances and relationships with the people that you've involved in those settings. Now here's the kind of counterbalancing example of like where this does not happen and how you get great results. Now, the 48 Laws of Power talks about using enemies, which I think is probably a bit of an aggressive label for what we're trying to talk about here. And I like to think about it more as like workers, or, people that are, you're paying them basically to do something. And so through various YouTube stuff that I've done on this channel or other channels, or through some of the Pokemon business stuff that I've done, creating logos and graphics and other stuff like that, I've hired a wide range of really, really talented designers and video editors and like marketing people to kind of help me do that. And I've used Fiverr, I've used personal connections where I'm not necessarily friends with this person, but I've gotten a reference from someone else who knows them. And so far, my experience with this has been phenomenal every single time. I have one example where I'm calling it phenomenal because I ended up firing this person, in that they were doing work for me. It started off great, and then as the kind of relationship continued on, they would say, oh, I can't, turn this video around in this time frame. I need another week. And I'd be like, okay, no problem. We've got a buffer of videos to kind of do it. But then it would slip again, and the timeline would keep slipping, and then a month would go by, and now it's impacting my ability as a creator to keep uploading. And so when it came to kind of me realizing this is a problem, I'm not going to be able to do what I want to do on a consistent basis if this person is my editor, I was able to just tell him, hey, this isn't working. I need to find someone else. I'm sorry. And because this person was not my friend per se, there was no emotional attachment to that decision. It was a business decision in that I want results for what I'm trying to do, and this is actively hindering me from doing it. So I'm going to cut the ties and move on. Whereas some of the other folks that I've worked with have been absolutely amazing. The editor of this channel, up until some of the more recent videos, was phenomenal. My editor on my previous YouTube channel was phenomenal. And these are people that reached out to me out of the blue to offer their services to me and help me, build out content and branding. Some of the stuff and design work that I did for one of my businesses, same thing. I would tell the person what I wanted. They would take a ton of creative liberty in kind of helping me as a non-artsy creative person go realize that vision, and then I would pay them for their services. And so with these business transactions where you're working with people that are workers, not necessarily friends, the expectations are clear, you're delivering value, both sides understand what's going on, and some of that constraint and more professional relationship actually drives the results that I was looking for in some of those instances. And so that's kind of my 3 stories. I think it's really, really important to think about this critically, because oftentimes the first intuition that we have trying to either do really good work or do business where it involves other people is to bring in friends that because friends are easy to trust. You've known them for a long time. But as that relationship gets put to the test, when stuff hits the road, where stress happens, that's where the cracks really start to show. And so you want to be really, really careful about how you use friends in a business setting. See you guys.